Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the bonus stage, Midwest Gaming Classic 2021, presented by Hair of the Dogcast and Premium Edition Games. Pleasure for you guys to be here. We really appreciate it. And we have a special Milwaukee kind of flavored developer here on the podcast right now, Mr. Jordan Davis.
It's me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Can you give us a little background of yourself and why you're here today?
Yeah, so I'm a musician here in Milwaukee. I'm a guitar player and a songwriter in a band called Space Raft, eponymously here. I've been doing music independently in Milwaukee for decades now. I guess in Wisconsin in general.
Okay.
Because I'm originally from Green Bay. But, Space Raft was on a bit of a hiatus after finishing our third record. And I had some downtime, and I started kind of putting together some chiptunes, versions of the songs that were on our third release, Positively Space Raft.
Okay.
And I kept sending it to the band as a joke, like, hey, isn't this funny? And they're like, yeah, this is great, dude, keep it up. So I eventually just chiptuned the entire album and sent it to the band for laughs, But it became a problem of, like, what do you do with chiptune music? Like, how do you present it to an audience as a band? Because you can't play it on stage. You can't, I could make a video, like a cute little 8-bit video or something. But the more time
That'd be too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more time I thought about, the more time I spent thinking about what I wanted to do, the more I realized that I just wanted to make an NES game.
Sure.
So I took the impetus from already having chiptuned the entire album to, finding the NESmaker software, and then basically starting to put together a brand new NES game starring my band.
Excellent. So without any game development this experience before?
First time.
First time?
Yeah, I learned how to work with the NES through making this game.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so all the research that I did was kind of rolled into this project.
Sure. And how long did it take before you were able to basically have a moving image on the screen?
Well, with the NESmaker software, it makes it pretty easy to import your graphics and your music. So you can cut out a lot of the development time just to get something up and running on screen. Even with that in mind, it took maybe about 5 weeks to get it going, where I could actually see some stuff on screen and kind of start to get my ideas together.
Yeah.
Because in the overall process to develop this game took about 2 years.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
So the pandemic kind of rolled into that as well.
As a solo developer.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, no, that's not true, because I worked with a developer in France named Dale Coupe.
Okay.
Who is very popular in the NESmaker scene because he's basically helped us all with our projects.
Gotcha.
So he is the famous Dale Coupe.
Okay, so he was kind of like the Mr. Miyagi of the process.
Exactly.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, and can you tell a little bit about the game? Because I was reading the description and I'm like, I need to actually play this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So part of it is based on my love of licensed games in the NES era. One of the first games I got as a kid was Goonies 2.
Yes.
And Karate Kid, which is not the best, but it was an experience to be had. It
was a game.
I still love Goonies 2, one of my favorites. But the idea of putting licensed content or IPs in an 8-bit format as an 8-bit video game had stuck with me since I was a kid. So
and honestly, Goonies 2, also one of my favorite games on the NES.
It's the greatest music.
Has
Totally.
a great rendition of the Cyndi Lauper song,
which was one of the #1 inspirations for this.
Yeah.
So even starting
out of any at least as far as my game playing knowledge has gone, as far as any chiptune version of a theme song for any NES game,
Absolutely.
Goonies, the Goonies are good enough.
100% in agreement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So that was one of the biggest influences for me to even get into chiptune, because I knew that there were real world examples of real songs being transcribed into chiptune.
Yeah.
So I kind of took that idea and I looked at a lot of the licensed games in the library. Some of the things that came up, like TNC Surf Design, was a big factor, because obviously that was a bit of a shameless marketing campaign for,
Yes.
TNC Surf Design.
As a kid, that didn't dawn on me.
Well, we don't even know the title.
I still like surfing as a gorilla. That
Exactly.
was all I cared about.
But the title of the game is Wood, Water, and Rage. Nobody knows that. We
Yeah.
only talk about
Right.
the company that commissioned it. TNC Surf Design.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, that was the title screen music in that game was super influential on me as a kid, which is probably the best part of the game, to be honest. That cool surf guitar of the beginning with the wave sound and the noise channel, just
it
perfection.
is pretty glorious.
But skateboarding and surfing, it's kind of all wrapped up into our kind of Milwaukee DIY independent music, scene. And so just building off of that influence, I took, TNC Surf Design and mixed it with my love of like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man, and did kind of a some NES games like Blaster Master had dual modes of gameplay. Yep. So I kind of took that idea and so there are character levels where you can play as the band members in kind of a Pac-Man collectathon kind of way, where you need to collect all the sandwiches on screen to progress.
Nice, as you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So between driving and eating, that's basically what you do as a band anyway.
Yeah. That is legitimately, yeah. And maybe some yelling amongst each other,
exactly.
Kicking people out of the band,
and then sound checking. That's what bands
with
are.
Each other's girlfriends.
You're right.
Lots of drugs. So I've heard. I don't know.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I've seen Almost Famous, so I know everything about music. So can you run through the concept, I guess, of the game? You're on the search for a new bass player, did you say, or something?
No, so the villain of our game is our ex-bass player, Serini.
It's always a bass player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the plot of the game, Serini has stolen the master tapes to the new records because he's jealous and feels slighted. In reality, he told us he was leaving town the week our first record came out, so it was a bit... It was...
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was...
So the villain is a real person.
He's a real person. He's a real ex-bass player.
A real ex...
Anyway, in the game, he's stolen the master tapes from the record, so you're basically kind of chasing him through town, almost like in a reverse Hard Day's Night Beatles scenario, but instead of being chased by a bunch of girls, we're chasing down our ex-bass player to get the tapes, Right. So he's actually the villain in every level, similarly to what Donkey Kong does.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So he shows up, and he's basically the enemy in the game in every level.
Right.
So every level in the game is a real life location here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I love the Milwaukee connection, and that's what really connected with me. You have actual music venues represented,
restaurants and bars,
sure,
as well as personalities from the independent music scene here in Milwaukee.
Okay.
So all the NPCs in the character are actual real people here in Milwaukee.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's other bands, including bands like hardcore band Holy Shit.
I've heard of them.
We might have a member in attendance here.
Exclamation point.
Yeah, and we've got legendary Milwaukee venues like the Cactus Club in there, which is instantly recognizable for a Milwaukee native because it's like the rock and roll venue.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So are you primarily based in the Bayview kind of area or Walker's Point?
Yeah, we're mostly South Milwaukee.
Sure.
I'm by the airport now, but when the game was developed, we were all in Bayview at the time, and actually all four of us were working at Cactus Club at one point.
Oh, really?
Well.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like that. Putting that venue into the game was like adding our living room. It was like such a home connection there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're basically on the south side. We'd kind of floated around Milwaukee for a few decades, River West kind of Bayview connection though.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you started sending, did you wait till the game was complete to send to your bandmates for feedback? Or did you even submit the feedback?
I gave them demo cards. I had development carts that I would pass to them occasionally just to get their feedback, And, I would mainly send it to Serini so that he could approve any jokes I was making about him.
Being the villain and all.
Exactly.
Right.
Because he is one of my best friends, and I hope that continues.
Not after this interview, buddy. Sorry, Serini. No, that's cool. So when you started sending out the code for feedback, or just hey, play this, I'm assuming, did your fellow bandmates give you some constructive feedback for things to change? Maybe could you make my butt a couple less pixels wide kind of thing? Or
I think that they were pretty much just amazed that it existed in any state that I showed it to them. Just this is crazy. I can't believe that you're doing this. Which is, kind of the reaction that it got from our audience as well. I knew that because most of our audience is, record collecting nerds, like we are basically. We,
Absolutely.
our bass player John has, some of the best collections of like mid '60s and '70s Wisconsin rock and roll 45s. He's an obsessive collector.
Oh, wow.
Wisconsin rock memorabilia and stuff.
That's cool.
Totally cool. And because we associate with record collectors and stuff who intrinsically like old things, and like myself, like my NES and my record player are like two things that are kind of like these tactile experiences that I had as a kid, and like kind of brought them into my adulthood as being like the things that defined a lot of my appreciation for video games and music,
Yeah.
So I thought maybe some of our audience might have that same connection to the NES.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, by and large, your bandmates were happy with the products.
Totally, and part of it is that we, our bass player John started picking up these multi-carts from eBay or wherever. We had like 501 games on it, and we would
Quality.
have band practice nights where instead of playing, like we would just actually plug in a Nintendo and start playing like through Famicom titles like Door or Nuts and Milk, like stuff we had never heard of.
Oh, yeah.
And just like, oh, look at this, cute little things. And we would be drinking and smoking or whatever and being like, this is a blast, like,
Yeah.
this is super fun.
We don't have to write this bridge tonight. We're playing Nuts and Milk. Man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nuts and Milk takes priority in this practice. But, just the whole fact of playing, little 8-bit games with friends was such a, like on a game night with your buddies.
Oh, yeah.
It's a real, it's a real tangible experience that you can have.
Yeah, like you said, same here. I'm assuming we're in a similar age bracket. Yeah, and it's such a formative time. And video games, any child who is exposed to video games at a young age, I think, that shapes a lot of their personality and
Totally.
who they are.
I mean, the sound of the NES to me was one of the most important things that I can remember. I mean, I didn't get my first instrument until I was 12, I think, but I heard my NES at 5.
Sure.
And that was, like the first time I heard the DPCM snare drum in Contra was like the first time that I understood like what the difference between a kick drum and a snare drum was.
Oh, excellent.
Or like listening to the Cyndi Lauper, Goonies 2 theme song, hearing it in real life, then hearing it in chiptune, was like, there's less going on in the chiptune, but I can start to understand.
Separate the actual
the
instruments
pieces.
and
Oh, here's what a bass line is. Like, this is the melody,
Same
this
here,
is the harmony. Yeah, and breaking it down in that level was super influential on me as a kid. Just like understanding what music is and what it does,
Yeah.
So going back to that was super fulfilling.
Yeah. So when you did the chiptune versions, did you do design the chiptune songs with the extra channels of the Famicom version?
No, it's all 4-channel NES, so there's no
Okay.
DPCM on it either.
Yeah.
So one of the limitations that I chose was to fit all 10 songs from Positively Space Raft on the game. So because of the memory limitations, some of them show up as just cutscene music or just a simple verse chorus kind of thing.
Right.
But I had to do a lot of work and a lot of research to make it sound good on 4 channels.
Oh, I bet.
Because we're a 4-piece band with 3 singers, which means, drums, bass, guitar, and keyboards, but then also 3 layers of harmony from singers. So to try to like distill that down into its core, like here's the melody, here's the harmony to that melody, and here's the bass.
That's amazing.
It really took a lot of effort to, fit in the guitar and the keyboard kind of nuance without actually having those instruments.
Right. So you designed the game, you developed the game, and when you had you intended to release it publicly to the masses, and did you have to raise funds to do that?
So I did release it on Kickstarter. My initial dream was to have it available for sale on our record label Dusty Medical's website. So just having it there as an oddity would just be such a cool thing.
Right.
And then, having a few copies that we could bring to shows and put on our merch table just to get people talking, or just nobody does that. No one's done,
Right.
Yeah, it's a very unique
phenomenal.
thing.
Yeah.
So, I assumed that there would be, 25, 30 people that might be interested in buying a copy, but I put it up on Kickstarter, and I broke my funding goal in 15 hours.
Oh my God.
And then basically, like, quadrupled my expectations for the project. I ended up printing about 250 copies, which I'm almost sold through of a first press.
Sure.
So, I mean, expecting to sell about 25, like that was way bigger than my initial estimation.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Are you planning another run?
Yeah, I'm going to be doing a small run just so I can keep it on the merch table and on the website.
Sure.
Because that, to me, is the ultimate payoff, is just having it available for people if they're interested. I mean, that's just the coolest thing. You know, in the meantime, it's kind of launched a bit of a career for me. I've been doing soundtracks for other developers and have specialized as like a chiptune composer for games.
Are you going to be the villain in Space Raft 2 after you leave the band? This is getting meta.
Well, I mean, if that idea isn't copyrighted, I could maybe just pull that in.
I'm just saying you can use it if you want. Just put me in the credits.
I appreciate your charity.
Just so I could show my mom something. Speaking of, I mean, are there plans for a Space Raft 2? Are you already conceptualizing what that would look like?
Yeah, but I am going to purposely take my time to realize any of that, because the things that I have in mind would require a lot more skill set to be built to make the type of NES sequel that I'd like to see. So rather than like trying to finish a project without the skills, what I've done is kind of branch off as more of an asset developer for other NES programmers.
Right.
So right now I'm working on several graphics projects, just doing pixel art for other developers, and then focusing on just visual art and music.
Sure.
And that is helping me a lot, just like learning from other developers and programmers and just keeping busy to get more credits under my name, to get my name out there to other developers who are looking for music and et cetera. So I just keep building skills, trying to raise that bar.
That's great. And is this your first Midwest Gaming Classic?
It is my first as a developer.
As a developer?
Yes.
And how's the experience been for you?
It's been awesome. So one of the big reasons that I am showing here is that we're working on porting Space Raft to the arcade for the local arcade here, X-Ray Arcade in Cudahy.
Sure.
So they basically sponsored us to produce a cabinet for X-Ray to live at X-Ray Arcade.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, and so I've actually done a complete remix of the game to fit in the arcade context. So it basically strips out a lot of the exposition from the game and some of the discovery stuff to just keep it, on the action on the pedal to the metal, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's a timer. There's a high score setter, so we can have maybe a competition at X-Ray eventually.
That's great, man.
And it's a work in progress, but I can't thank those guys enough for supporting us. And we're basically here representing them, and then the fact that we've got a game out.
Oh, that's fantastic. X-Ray, if you are in the Milwaukee area, X-Ray Arcade is great.
It's the best. They're a
live
punk venue, all ages, that has a fleet of basically like 90s beat 'em ups and some shooting games. Just like it's one of the greatest places in Milwaukee, and it fits right in with our DIY aesthetic and our total Indian music scene. Yeah, everybody working there, especially our man Tony over here.
Tony
and Justin Wexler, one of the owners of X-Ray.
Yeah, sure.
He's the man. And I can't thank those guys enough for getting behind us and kind of pulling all of us through.
That's great. All the support is
totally.
It's very heartwarming in the community, and I'm so happy for your success, man. If people want to buy a copy, like sell through what you have now, where can they get a hold of? Or where can they find Space Raft?
So dustymedical.com has cartridges and our LPs for sale. So all of our records are available there. So anything Space Raft can be found on dustymedical.com or on Bandcamp.
Okay.
As well as the chiptune version of the soundtrack.
Love the cassette.
However, I've got my developer name is Raftronaut.
Okay.
And I've got a SoundCloud under Raftronaut with all of my chiptune works. So I've got basically a compilation of all the soundtracks that I've worked on, and I use it as like a working portfolio.
Gotcha.
So if anyone's curious, they can always stop by SoundCloud Raftronaut to check that out. And then for other development stuff, I use Twitter a lot. My handle is 0000 Jordan. So quadruple Jordan.
Totally easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But my nickname there is Raftronaut as well. That's what I do, all my development work under. And then I run kind of a studio called Raft Labs, which is just a collection of my friends who work on projects.
Okay, great.
I sold a game to a dispensary in Chicago, this 420.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, called Waldo's Forever. So that was like my first real contract job. They weren't able to hold their Dispensary 33 in Chicago wasn't able to hold their annual 420 festival.
Right.
So instead, they released an NES game on their website that you can basically work off the emulator there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was contacted by some marketing friends in a band called White Mystery, and we kind of hooked that all up, and then that was my first contract work. And again, this has all been so fulfilling for me, that I just, keep my foot on the gas and keep moving forward with all these projects.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are your bandmates demanding a cut of all the profits?
They just want copies.
They just want for now. Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Jordan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And like I said, it's so great to have a Milwaukee developer with a game about Milwaukee,
totally.
featuring Milwaukee,
representing
is fantastic.
Absolutely.
So, Jordan, all the success to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to Hair of the Dogcast. And we will be back with more content, probably right after this video. I don't know, or maybe it's a murder podcast. Who knows? All right, see you guys.